River Out of Eden by Richard Dawkins, published in 1995, is a concise exploration of evolutionary biology, presenting the theory of evolution as a powerful explanatory framework for the diversity of life on Earth. Dawkins uses the metaphor of a river of DNA flowing through time and branching out into various species to explain how all living organisms are connected through their genetic heritage. The book builds on the ideas Dawkins introduced in earlier works like The Selfish Gene and The Blind Watchmaker, continuing his effort to make complex scientific ideas accessible to a general audience, while defending the power of Darwinian evolution. At the core of River Out of Eden is the concept of genes as the fundamental units of natural selection. Dawkins describes genes as the carriers of information that pass through generations, replicating themselves with slight variations over time. These variations are the raw material upon which natural selection acts, favoring genes that enhance the survival and reproductive success of the organisms they inhabit. The river, in the title, symbolizes this continuous flow of genetic information, with each individual organism representing a brief, momentary vessel in the river's journey through time. In this way, Dawkins emphasizes that evolution is a process that occurs over vast stretches of time, with each species being a temporary branch of the larger genetic flow. One of the key ideas Dawkins discusses is the concept of digital information in biology. He compares the genetic code to a form of digital information, similar to the binary code used in computers. DNA, composed of sequences of nucleotides, adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, encodes instructions for building and maintaining organisms. Dawkins argues that this digital nature of genetic information is what makes life possible, as it allows for the precise replication and transmission of complex instructions across generations. The comparison between biological and digital information also highlights the precision and efficiency of natural selection in preserving and propagating useful genetic variations. Dawkins also explores the idea of life as a series of successful replicators. He explains that organisms are essentially vehicles for their genes, which use them to survive and reproduce. This gene-centered view of evolution, which Dawkins introduced in The Selfish Gene, is central to his explanation of how complex traits and behaviors can evolve. Organisms are seen as products of their genes, with natural selection favoring those genetic combinations that result in successful survival strategies. This process, over time, leads to the evolution of the wide array of species and behaviors seen in nature. A significant portion of the book is dedicated to explaining how evolution leads to the appearance of design in nature without the need for an intelligent designer. Dawkins argues that natural selection, acting over long periods of time, can give rise to complex and seemingly purposeful structures, such as the intricate wings of a butterfly or the keen eyesight of a predator. He emphasizes that these adaptations are the result of the gradual accumulation of small changes, each of which confers a survival advantage. While the process is undirected and blind, it produces the illusion of design, because only those changes that enhance an organism's fitness are preserved and passed on. One of the central metaphors Dawkins uses in the book is that of God's utility function. He challenges the view that evolution is guided by a benevolent creator with the interests of organisms in mind. Instead, Dawkins argues that evolution operates with a kind of cold efficiency, selecting traits that maximize the survival and reproduction of genes, often at the expense of the individual organism's well-being. He points out that nature is often brutal and indifferent, with organisms competing fiercely for resources and survival. The idea of a utility function reflects the fact that evolution is driven by the differential survival of genes, not by any concern for the happiness or welfare of individual organisms. In this context, Dawkins critiques teleological interpretations of life, which suggest that life is progressing towards some ultimate goal or higher purpose. He argues that evolution is a blind, purposeless process that does not aim for perfection or improvement. Instead, it is shaped by the immediate demands of survival in a given environment. Organisms evolve to be good enough to survive and reproduce in their specific ecological niches, rather than to achieve some ideal state of existence. This lack of direction or purpose in evolution is one of the central points Dawkins makes throughout the book, reinforcing the idea that complexity and adaptation can arise without a guiding hand. Another important theme in River Out of Eden is the role of chance in evolution. Dawkins explains that while natural selection is a non-random process, it works on random genetic mutations. These mutations provide the variation needed for natural selection to operate, and over time, beneficial mutations become more common in a population. However, the randomness of mutations means that evolution is contingent and unpredictable. There is no guarantee that a particular trait will evolve, or that it will do so in the same way in different populations. This randomness contributes to the diversity of life and the fact that similar environmental pressures can lead to different evolutionary outcomes in different species. Dawkins also addresses the concept of selfish genes and their role in shaping behavior. He explains that while genes may be selfish in the sense that they strive to replicate themselves, this does not mean that organisms, or the behaviors they exhibit, are selfish. In fact, cooperation and altruism can evolve if they enhance the survival of the genes responsible for those behaviors. Dawkins uses examples from animal behavior, such as kin selection and reciprocal altruism, to show how seemingly selfless actions can be explained through the lens of gene survival. For instance, animals may help close relatives because those relatives share many of the same genes, and by helping them survive, the helper indirectly ensures the continuation of its own genetic material. The book also delves into the concept of inclusive fitness, which expands the traditional definition of fitness to include not just an individual's reproductive success, but also the success of its relatives. This idea helps explain why organisms may evolve behaviors that benefit their kin, even at a cost to themselves. Inclusive fitness is a key concept in understanding the evolution of social behaviors, such as cooperation, altruism, and even conflict, as organisms navigate the complex web of relationships within their populations. Dawkins further explores the evolutionary history of life on Earth, tracing the branching patterns of the tree of life. He explains that all living organisms share a common ancestor and that the diversity of life today is the result of billions of years of evolutionary divergence. He emphasizes that the tree of life is not linear, but highly branched, with countless species arising and going extinct over time. This view of life as a branching process, rather than a progression toward higher forms, reinforces the idea that evolution is driven by the needs of survival in changing environments, not by a predetermined plan.